Hey everyone, so the Shelby GT350R, it is an American car with exotic features and aspects to it. Everything from the flat plane crank engine to the various carbon fiber aspects. It's probably going to go down in history as one of the last great manual transmission driver's cars, and because of that, prices are rising very quickly. And the car's probably going to maintain its value as cars like this are no longer available. Now, because of the exotic aspects and the track capabilities of this car, it kind of begs the question of what does it actually cost to own and maintain a GT350R? Now, the short answer is there's really nothing prohibitively expensive from owning a GT350R, despite it having essentially an exotic engine in it. Compared to other exotic cars, this does not require things like engine out services or belt services that can make a vehicle very expensive to own and maintain because it has a chain driven valve train and the engine does not have to come out for any servicing like that. The car is actually very easy to work on yourself. It is a traditional front engine rear drive layout the way other Mustangs and other performance vehicles are set up. So if you're looking to pick up a GT350R and you're concerned about how much it's going to cost to maintain, the first thing you should probably do is take a look at the maintenance guide in the owner's supplement. And you're going to find it's very similar to other Mustangs as far as the interval for filters and fluids. For street driving, the service intervals are basically going to be identical to other Mustangs, Mustang GTs, or base Mustangs. Now, getting into probably one of the most common aspects of maintaining the vehicle, that's going to be an oil change. Now, it does take a little bit of a more exotic oil, but it's not excessively expensive and it's not hard to get. It takes a 5W50 engine oil, so that's a much heavier duty oil and a much thicker oil than what a Mustang GT is going to take, and it takes 10 quarts. Typically, you will find them for around $10 to $15 a quart if you want to get the factory oil. If you want to run something aftermarket, it can be a little bit more expensive, but it is readily available. There's also a Shelby specific filter that this car takes that was designed for the later canister filter cars. It is the FL2087. It's the only cartridge filter designed for this vehicle that has a metal sleeve on the inside to help the filter cope with the higher pressures from the thicker oil and the higher engine speeds compared to the FL2062 that is the same size, but it's not designed for as heavy duty usage. So that filter is usually around $30, $40 or so. So for you to do an oil change yourself on a GT350R, you're probably looking in the neighborhood of about $150. A little bit more expensive than a regular Mustang, but not excessively expensive. And the oil change is very simple. It's going to be basically the same layout and procedure that any other Mustang is going to be. And what you're going to find is when you look at the capacities in the owner's manual for the specifics of how much fluid each system takes and what type, most of the fluids are shared with other Ford vehicles. So they're easy to get whether you want to get them online, at a dealer, you want to get something aftermarket from a part supplier. They are readily available and you can get them. And they are not excessively expensive since they are shared with other Ford vehicles. Now, getting into some of the consumables for the vehicle. Some of these are a little bit more expensive than a regular Mustang will be. Things like the tires. The GT350Rs from the factory come with Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires. They are a very aggressive tire. They are designed for track use, and they do wear down very quickly. For in street driving conditions, even if you're very gentle with the car and you're not really aggressive with it, you're probably going to get no more than 5,000 miles out of a set of Cup 2s. That's just how they are. They're a very soft compound tire, and they're designed to wear down quickly, but they give excellent feedback, and they grip very well. So for a set of Cup 2s, you're probably looking at about $2,000. So it would be pretty expensive to continually run them on the street. And if you're tracking the car, you're going to go through a set of tires very, very quickly, potentially after one track event if you're driving the car very aggressively. There is some other options available. Michelin is finally starting to make a PS4 available for the GT350R that fits the factory sizes. So it's not as aggressive of a tire, but it will last much longer and it's better suited for the possibility of more adverse weather condition. It's not as affected by temperature the way Cup 2s are. And like I said, it's going to last a lot longer. So for a street-driven car, you're going to get a heck of a lot more time out of a set of PS4s. They obviously are not as grippy and responsive as a set of Cup 2s, but they are a little bit cheaper. You're probably talking $1,500, $1,600 for a set of PS4s, which is a great option if you're street driving the car and you don't want something as aggressive as the factory Cup 2s. Some of the more common things that you're going to be going through maintenance-wise, if you're especially putting some miles on the car, things like the brakes. You can get some of these parts cheaper, especially if you go to some online sellers, or if you want to go with some sort of aftermarket aspects. Things like the brake pads, you're going to probably looking at around $300 to get a set of brake pads from the dealer for one axle. But again, you can always go cheaper if you get them cheaper if you go with something online or aftermarket. The brake rotors themselves, you're looking at about $500 per rotor. So again, more expensive than a regular Mustang GT is going to be, but not excessively expensive. And you're not typically going to be replacing those that often. If you're tracking the car, you're obviously going to be going through them a lot faster, but not excessively expensive, and they are readily available. Even things like the OE clutch, you're looking around $500 for the factory clutch, which is pretty good considering it's a twin plate clutch. So again, all available online at a dealer. You can get these parts. You don't have to go to someone that sells parts internationally. You don't have to go overseas to get these parts. They are readily available because it is a Ford vehicle, despite the exotic aspect and track capabilities of this car. So now, there are definitely some expensive aspects of this car, but fortunately they are not consumables. For the most part, things like the carbon fiber aspects, the wing and the wheels are pretty expensive on the 350R, same as the seats. And probably the most expensive aspect of the GT350R is going to be the engine. The flat plane crank engine that came from the factory in the 350s and 350Rs is about $25,000. So that is a pretty expensive engine, especially compared to the engine that was used in other Mustangs, like Mustang GTs, are nowhere near that expensive. And this brings me to my next point. If you're going to own a GT350R for an extended period of time, you plan on keeping the car for a long time like me, I would highly recommend, especially for the later cars, the 19s and the 20s, that still have the option for. The earlier cars are kind of out of the time frame at this point, but a factory extended warranty is really a good idea. I got one for my car. There are several online dealers that sell the genuine Ford warranties online instead of going down to your local dealer and getting it, and the prices are very, very good compared to getting it from your local dealer. That's what I got. My car, I got an 8-year, 36,000-mile warranty with a $0 deductible. I got the Premium Care, which is the highest level warranty. Ford offers 4 different levels, everything from the base warranty, which basically just covers some of the base aspects of the powertrain, all the way to Premium Care, which covers the entire car bumper to bumper. And I paid $1,500 for that 8-year warranty for the Premium Care. Now, this is something I kind of argue with some other owners about, basically getting extended warranty and which level you should get. My opinion is these cars are pretty expensive, and the parts are getting expensive for these cars. There are so many things like sensors and electronics in these, and the labor alone is starting to get expensive. When I priced out all the different levels of warranties, what I found was the cheapest base warranty was about $700, and the highest level one, the Premium Care, was $1,500. So on an $80,000 vehicle, to pay $800 more to have the entire vehicle covered, I think is well worth it. I don't think anyone who's looking to hold on to these cars for a long period of time should kind of really skimp out and either not get a warranty or get a cheap one, because like I said, everything is expensive on these cars. And just even getting something like a diagnosis is probably going to cost you $100, $200. So I think it's well worth it. I'm covered till 2028. If anything on this car fails from now on time I bought it in 2020 to 2028, it's covered. Now, one thing I do want to cover real quick is there are some misunderstandings about how extended warranties work. Now, like I said, I got an 8-year, 36,000-mile warranty. Now, this does not add 8 years to the existing warranty. It brings the existing warranties up to 8 years. Now, some of the aspects of the car are 5 years of coverage. Some of them are 3 years of coverage. It will bring all of those up to 8 years. And that's the maximum that Ford allows from the factory, is up to 8 years of coverage with their extended warranty. So like I said, it doesn't tack 8 years on to the end. It just brings everything up to 8 years. So 2028 Up till then, I am covered for every aspect of my GT350R should I run into a problem. And finally, the last aspect that I think a lot of people overlook for what it actually costs to own a GT350R is going to be the insurance. Now, insurance, everyone knows the rates can be tremendously different person to person. There are so many aspects that affect your insurance rates. Everything from your age, your driving history, where you live, the insurance company, the specific aspects and conditions of your policy, your credit score. There are so many things that can affect your insurance. Now, for somebody like me, I have a really good insurance company. I have USAA, which I think is a top level company. I'm in my upper 30s now, so I've had my driver's license for over 20 years. I have an excellent driving history with no tickets. And in my specific policy, I have the car right now set for up to 2,000 miles a year, which is fine for me. Like most 350R owners, I'm not daily driving the car. I live in the Northeast, so I don't drive the car in the wintertime. I don't drive it at all to work. I just basically use it kind of driving around town, and I don't track the car. Now, with insurance, most insurance companies will not cover you for track use anyway. You have to get track insurance, which is very expensive. So tracking these cars in general is expensive, but the insurance makes it even more so. So I also make sure I have very high coverage limits. I don't run around with state minimum insurance. I think that's a really bad idea, especially if you're driving an expensive car. I make sure that I have very high liability coverages, and I make sure that all the aspects meet or exceed the value of this car, which is really important as the price of these cars start to go up. So I make sure I have uninsured motorist coverage above the value of the car. I make sure I have property damage coverage above the value of the car. So God forbid the worst happens to the car, I am covered. That I'm going to get what I feel is the value of the car. And some policies allow you, usually the collector policies, but they will allow you to do declared value on the car, and they will set your price accordingly. So now I pay about $700 a year to insure the car. Now, that might seem kind of cheap, but again, you have to take into aspects. I only drive the car up to about 2,000 miles a year. Good driving history. I've had my license over 20 years, so I'm not like in my early 20s where it's typically more expensive. And the main thing that saves me a lot of money on my insurance is because I live up in the Northeast, I do not drive the car in the winter. So typically I have a blackout period from about December to about April. So in the neighborhood of about 4 months. The USAA offers what they call a storage mode, where essentially if you're not going to be driving the car, you can put the car into storage mode, which means the car is covered for when it's sitting in the garage and not being used, but it doesn't cover the car if it's being driven. So because I'm not using the car, the insurance rates go down considerably. Now I put like I said, about 4 months it's in storage mode in the garage up in the Northeast here, and that knocks about $500 off the insurance. So because of that, it would have been about $1,300 a year, give or take, if I lived down south where I wasn't storing the car in the wintertime. But because I'm up in the north, you're talking in the neighborhood of about $700 a year to insure the car the way I do. Again, if you were daily driving the car and using it a lot more, mine would be much higher. But because the mileage is so low and I store it in the winter, it keeps the insurance down to a very, very reasonable level. And like I said, lots of options for insurance. You can do collector car if you're really driving the car very, very little, and they are typically catered to exotic and more fancy cars like the GT350R. So it's basically just not an expensive car to own and maintain. Obviously, if you're tracking the car, it's going to be considerably more expensive, and depending on how much you're tracking it and how aggressive you're driving, you got to go through your consumables a lot more. It's going to cost a lot more to insure. But for most GT350R owners that are using this car kind of sparingly like me, you're using it on your nice days, using it on the weekends in the summertime, just drive around, maybe go to car shows and just have some fun spirited drives. It's really not expensive to maintain. It's going to cost a little bit more than your average Ford Mustang is going to cost, but it's not excessively more. I think it's basically on par with how expensive that car is. So if you're looking to purchase one of these cars, I kind of hope that this basically answered the question of what it's going to cost you to own and maintain a car like this. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.